Blog Talk Radio.
Okay, Michamo, Afurakanu, Afuraitkaitnut. We were having a little bit of an issue with the audio, so let us know if you can hear. If you're on the phone line and you can hear, hit the number 1 so we can see that the audio is working properly. Anybody on the phone line, hit number 1. Okay, and now we're opening up the chat room. There was a problem with the direct connect on Blog Talk, so that's why you weren't able to hear the first few minutes. So we just tried a different connection. So it looks like people are able to hear. And we're opening up the chat room as well. If you have a question or a comment as the chat room opens up, you must log in as a user in order to interact in the chat room. If you don't have a username, you can sign up for one quickly in Blog Talk. And if you have a question or a comment, of course, on the phone line, you simply hit the number 1, and you can see that your hand is raised. So now we're going to try this one more time. Okay, so it looks like in the chat room, people are saying they can hear now. All right, so for individuals who are new to the broadcast, Michiamo, reading Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnut people, the Dinde Ojirapo, Kwesi, Rana Akan, Akomamana Marukai Tipi Ru Ojirapo, Ojiraman Ru. That means greetings to all Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnut people. My name is Ojirapo, Kwesi, Rana Akan, Ojirapo, the Apamu nation in North America within Ojiraman, the purified nation, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnut people in the Western Hemisphere. So, thank you for tuning into the broadcast once again. We were able to clear up those audio issues for the first few minutes. All we had done was did a short introduction. We were just talking about the shows that we have on a weekly basis. AKANFO NANASOM on Joda Monday night. We have Ujira on Tuesday nights. We have Ekbua Marketplace on Wednesday night. And then we have Online Sim Affairs of the Nation on Yauda on Thursday night. So, post some links real quick in the chat room. And as we're doing that, post a link to the publications page on the website so you can get to the links for the book that we're gonna cover tonight. That's in the home section or page on the website has a link to all of our publications. So, all right. Let me pull this up one more time. All right. So everything's straight now. So before we get started, we just want to, first of all, there's an announcement coming in Minida this Saturday, December 17th. We are having our Kait Soul Food Communal Gathering, Ojiraman Communal Gathering. It is taking place December 17th. Here in Washington, D.C., the terms Ka and Kait are the male and female terms for soul, divine consciousness, the deity dwelling in the head region of Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnut people. Those terms Ka and Kait, called Okra and Trawa and Akan, deal with that in ancient Kemet and Khanat, so-called ancient Egypt and Nubia. Our ancestral language, the terms Ka and Kait mean soul, divine consciousness, but they also mean food offerings, divine food offerings. So Ka and Kait means soul, but it also means food offerings. So we're having an event. We're going to have food vendors, raw vegan food, as well as cooked vegan food, as well as organic coffee, organic tea. That's going to be December 17th. Of course, the event is open to Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnut people only. It is a free event, of course. We never charge an admission fee, and we will be doing a presentation on the committee Feku, properly contextualizing Kemet within ancestral religious practice. There's misinformation regarding the nature of the practice and culture and cosmology of ancient Kemet. Some people act as though it's separate from Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit culture. We show, of course, in our work that the religion and culture of ancient Khanit and Kamit continue. It's the exact same culture you find all over Afuraka, Afuraitkai. It's the exact same culture, the exact same religion that you find in the Western Hemisphere. Hoodoo, which is the Akan religion in North America. Juju, which is the Yoruba religion in North America. Vodou, which is the Fon and Ebe religion in North America. Wanga, which is the Obambo and other Bantu religions in North America. Grigri, which is the Bambara and other Mindi-speaking religious practices in North America. These are all expressions of our ancient ancestral religion and culture of Khanit and Kamit. We simply migrated to different places and continued our culture. So there's a direct continuum. It's not just true historical. We're dealing with ritual. The same deities that we were worshiping and being possessed by thousands of years ago are the exact same deities by the exact same names that exist in all these various cultures. So we're going to show the proper contextualization of Kemet within ancestral religious practice. Published our book, Khanit and Kamit, the Black Nation and Divinity, properly defining the term Kemet and showing them etymologically and cosmologically they still exist in the Akan language by the exact same name and same definition. So we go through that information in the book. We will be giving away a free copy of that book to everyone who attends the event. So December 17th, the doors open at 6:30 p.m. Libation begins at 7 sharp. So be there early for that. We will have the food vendors. We'll be having a presentation. It's free, of course. Of course, you're going to purchase the food, but the admission is always free. We will be giving away a free copy of our book that we will be speaking on to everyone who attends the event. And we've done that with all of our events. When we're speaking in D.C. or when we speak around the country, our events are always free. They're always open to Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people only. And we always give away a free copy of the book that we are speaking on at that particular presentation. We've given away over 1,100 free copies of our softcover book around the country over the past year and a half to 2 years and so forth. We're going to continue that process. So that particular book, Kemet and Kamit, you can see that on our publications page. We put that in the chat room. That's one of our 24 books. And you can download the free ebook versions of all 24 of our books. We also have the softcover versions as well. So that event is coming up. When you look on Facebook, that's the way you register. You can also register on our Ojira Mind. And we're going to put this in the chat room real quick. We have a separate social media network outside of Facebook and Twitter and the various other platforms. We have our own separate platform. The Ojira Mind network is on ojiramind.spruz.com. You can join that network. It's very similar to Facebook. You can create a profile. We post blogs and videos and images and notes and discussions and everything else. So you can join that network. You'll be able to connect with people in this country and around the world. Our people only, of course, who are studying the same information. We need to have our own social media network outside of the regular social media networks that are controlled by the white supremacists. Of course, they cancel people out and shut people down whenever they speak intelligently about our culture, whenever they feel like. So we have to have our own autonomous network. You can register for the Kait Soul Food Ojira Mind Communal Gathering event on that network. Or when you go to Facebook, we have an event notification. You can indicate that you're going to be attending in that event notification as well. So, we'll pull that information back up. So, again, people who just came in, if you have a question or a comment, hit the number 1 on the phone line. And if you would like to interact in the chat room, you must log in as a user in order to interact, the username. All right, so Monday nights, Joda is AKANFO NANASOM, ancient, authentic, Akan Ancestral Religion. On Joda Monday nights, we deal specifically with ancient, authentic Akan Ancestral Religion, first and foremost, because we are Akan. Secondly, and there's no broadcast dealing specifically with Akan Ancestral Religion. Secondly, because of the misinformation that's being propagated by individuals in this hemisphere who are claiming Akan Ancestral Religion or Akan spirituality, as well as individuals on the continent of Afuraka, Afuraitkaitnut, Africa, whether it's Ghana, Ivory Coast, or other places, who are putting forward misinformation regarding Akan culture, Akan spirituality, religion, Akan cosmology, and so forth. Having been infected with white culture, with pseudo-religions like Christianity and Islam and Judaism and so forth, Hinduism, Buddhism, being infected with the idiocy of monotheism and other foolish doctrines, these infections have polluted the culture. And those pollution infections have been woven into the fabric of the culture by individuals on the continent. So very often, when you receive information from individuals who are born and raised on the continent and they tell you about Akan religion, and Akan spirituality and cosmology and so forth, you have some things, of course, that are accurate and many things that are foundationally, totally inaccurate. The reason it's inaccurate, polluted by the whites and their offspring culture that they've incorporated. So we must purify that information. We must approach Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit Ancestral Religion. Specifically, we're dealing with Akan Ancestral Religion from a purified, authentic perspective. For it to be authentic, we deal with our ancestral religion going back to the beginning. The people of ancient, quote-unquote, Nubia or Knesset, also called their region Khanat, or the Khan land. Khan meaning first, foremost, from the beginning. It also means to count, to calculate, or reckon. It also means luminous or illuminated in the ancient language. The people called themselves Khan. The land was called the Khan land or Khanat, meaning these various things. The first people, foremost people from the beginning, luminous, illuminated, also the first to count, calculate, or reckon, to establish civilization. In the Akan language today, the tree language of the Akan people today, the term Khan means first. The term Khan means first, foremost, from the beginning. It also means to count, to calculate, or reckon. It also means luminous, illuminated, and so forth. It is the same term, the same three meanings. Also the name of the people, also the name of the land and the culture. And then some of us were taken after we migrated from ancient Khanat and reestablished the Khanat Empire in the western part of the continent, so-called Empire of Ghana a couple of thousand years ago. After Muslim invasion, 1,000 years later, some of our people migrated further south towards the forest belt in the region of today's Ghana and Ivory Coast. Then a few hundred years after that, some of our people became prisoners of war during the the Great Diversity, the enslavement era, and therefore we were forced into the Western Hemisphere. And we ended up in North, Central, South America, the Caribbean, and parts of Europe. Those who still practice Akan religion, culture, and so forth, we maintain that ancestral religious practice transmitted through our blood circles intergenerationally and transcarnationally through successive reincarnation. Those in Suriname, for example, in South America, who practice the Akan religion is called Huinti, from the Akan term Huinti. In Jamaica, it's called Obia, from the Akan term Obai. In North America, the Akan religion is called Hoodoo, from the Akan term Undu, which means medicine from plant life and as well as mineral life, but also means to become heavy with the spirit through Conjure and so forth. And of course, the term Conjure comes from the Akan term Kanche, which means to utter incantations to bring down the spirit. And it means the same thing in ancient Kamet and Khanat in the Medusa, the hieroglyphs, and so forth, which we have proven in our book. So we have a direct connection from ancient Khanat to West Afuraka, Afuraitkaitnut, directly into North America. We did not learn of the Akan religion by some people going to Ghana a few decades ago, getting quote-unquote initiated and bringing shrines back to America, and then the Akan religion was established. That is not how the Akan religion was established in North America. The Akan religion was established in North America the moment that our ancestresses and ancestors arrived on these shores and brought the Akan religion into the Western Hemisphere. The Akan religion has been here for over 300 years. There was never a time that it was not here. As long as our people were here, the Akan ancestral religion was here. We are descendants from that authentic, original blood circle, that so-called blood lineage or blood circle. Our practice of Akan ancestral religion derives from that tradition that has been here for hundreds of years. When we were forced away from the continent, the manner in which our ancestresses and ancestors were practicing Akan ancestral religion at that moment, over 300 years ago in the 12,700s, the so-called 1700s, the manner in which they were practicing that sustained Akan expression of culture at that moment was fossilized in their bones and blood and transmitted intergenerationally since we've been here. What took place with Akan people who were still on the continent for the next 300 plus years, we had nothing to do with that. We continued to practice Akan religion over here the same way we were practicing it once we arrived. Across the water, they continued to practice, but then they became infected with Christianity and white culture and various other pseudo-philosophies. So some of that has stuck, and they're promoting that as part of the traditional religion. Some of our people over here got caught up with Christianity and began to try to infuse Christianity and the Bible and all this other nonsense and ancestral religious practice. Some of our people never did that. So we're stealing from that blood circle, that descent, that circle of authority of our ancestors and ancestors who maintained culture for the past 300 plus years. Hoodoo is the Akan religion in North America. So we're going to get into some details about a specific aspect of that tradition. One of the books that you can download is our Hoodooman, Hoodoo Nation, and when you go to the Hoodooman page on our website, you will see the Hoodooman, Hoodoo Nation journal, the journal for 13,017, as well as the journal for 13,016. We had our first annual Hoodooman, Hoodoo Nation Festival here in D.C. last year in October. We had the second annual festival just a couple of months ago here in D.C. as well. All-day event, we had vendors and presenters and so forth. So you can go to that particular page. In fact, you can go to the 13,017 journal. I'm sorry, no, the 13,016 journal. You can download that, as well as the Etchy Sign book as well. We'll be dealing with that. And those are the links you see on the promo for the show. With the title Kait, we're talking about the soul, the divine consciousness, the deity that dwells in the head region. The male divinity if you're female, or if you're male, the female divinity if you're female. Two-headed conjure and second sight. Hoodoo man and hoodoo woman in America. So we say that the Kait, examining the nature of that divinity that dwells in the head region of Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnut people only. We're dealing with the nature of the two-headed conjure doctor in Hoodoo, examining the relationship with second sight, ancestrally inherited by Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnut people in America, the spiri-genetic inheritance of the two-headed and second sight gives Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnut healers and healeresses in Hoodoo the insight to restore authenticity to ritual practice and the transmission of ancestral knowledge. And we talked about how this spiri-genetic inheritance is unbroken from ancient Khanit and Kamit through our Akan culture in West Afuraka, Afuraitkaitnut, to Hoodoo in North America. So what are we dealing with? The Kait, the deity that dwells in the head region, the divine consciousness within which your divine function is inscribed and written. You have that pull in your head region towards thoughts, intentions, and actions that's in harmony with divine order, because there's a deity dwelling in your head region that carries the divine function you are to execute in the world. You have natural inclinations towards certain kinds of occupations, sets of activities, because of your energy complex that has been written into your nature by the Supreme Being. That blueprint of who you are, what your function is, and what kind of cell within the great divine body you are is written into your brain, which is your Ka, or your Kait, your Kra, your Krawa. The I of the Krawa, or the Ka, the Kait, the I of the quote-unquote soul, quote-unquote third eye, is through which we have that quote-unquote second sight. So now when you hear about a two-headed conjure doctor in the Hoodoo tradition, there are different kinds of healers and healeresses. So first and foremost, when you hear about the term two-headed conjure doctor, they'll say, well, hey, two-headed conjure means they have one head in the physical realm and one head in the spirit realm, and that's the difference. In reality, it's more detailed and more nuanced. Some healers and healeresses in the Hoodoo tradition who deal primarily with herbs, with medicine, and so forth, and they're quote-unquote physicians, root doctors. But then you have others who are also dealing with this healing expression, but they're more so divine. They can also deal with physical medicine, but they're also diviners very often. They're seers, clairvoyant, clairaudient, and clairsentient, and various other expressions. When you look at the breakdown, and this is the difference between the regular root worker and the two-headed doctor. The one that can also, the two-headed doctor can deal with medicine as well, but they can also deal with divination, deal with what's taking place, the shaping factors of what's taking place, what spirits are coming after a person, what deities are governing a person, how their quote-unquote divine function is unfolding, and if they're off track with their divine function, what's coming around the corner, what's happening, who is going to be sent after them. Some people sending negative spirits to people, all these different things. The two-headed doctor can see that as well as engage the medicine. This is an Akan concept. This is Akan function once again. So, for example, we're showing that the Akan tradition is Hoodoo in North America. Until we published this information, people didn't know that Hoodoo was an ancestral religion. They just thought it was African-American folk magic, and people just use roots and herbs to heal and as well as attack people and make people fall in love or give them money and stuff like that. They thought it was a mixture or amalgamation of different Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnut practices and some mixture of some pseudo-Native American and pseudo-European nonsensical pseudo-folk magic, which is totally an act deities, ancestresses and ancestors, with a language, with ritual practices, with culture, and so forth. So in our publication, we prove this information. Bit by bit, point by point, we start unfolding. So when you go, for example, if you look at the Hoodooman and Hoodoo Nation Festival book, 13,007 page. If you download that and you go to the middle page, and we'll go to like page 20 to around 24. I'm going to pull that up real quick. And we listed a number of the, just to give people an example. When people talk about these different aspects of Hoodoo and say it's an amalgamation, we prove that's false. First of all, the term Hoodoo comes from the Akan term undu, which means medicine, from plant life, mineral life, and so forth, roots and so forth, but it also means to become heavy with the spirit. Undu, becoming heavy with the spirit, conjuring and so forth. And we prove that because people were trying to say that Hoodoo came from Irish or Jewish expressions and all this other nonsense. Then we have terms like mojo and jack or jackball. Mojo comes from moja in Akan. Jack or jackball comes from jak padie, that edja padie. Jak padie became jak padie or jak balie or jak ball. It's talking about medicine in a specific ritual container or containment utilized for a specific purpose. On the Matric clan side and the Patrick clan side, we have the moja. We also have the edja padie. We go into detail about that in our broadcast to show that mojo and jackball comes from moja and chapadie or chabalie in Akan. These are not some separate practices, an amalgamation that come directly from Akan culture. The Hoodoo doll baby comes from the Undu Akuaba. Akuaba literally means the baby or offspring. Aba, Akua, the carved doll that's utilized in Akan ritual practice. The Akuaba literally means the doll baby. So the Hoodoo doll baby, when people see the structure of that doll baby, it's the same as the Akuaba doll in the Akan tradition, literally meaning the same thing. Hoodoo man and Hoodoo woman, Hoodoo Mafo, Hoodoo Ma people, or the Hoodoo Ma people became Hoodoo man and Hoodoo woman, Akan priests and priestesses in the Hoodoo tradition. Hoodoo Mafo is a class of priests and priestesses or healers and healeresses in the Akan tradition, just as we have Akomfo, Abosomfo, we have Odun Sinifo, we have Udu Yefo, and so forth. We have talked about the Komfo, a class of priests or priestess, primarily who get possessed, become mounted by the Abosom, the deities, as well as the ancestors and ancestors, the Unsamanfo. The Komfo became pronounced Komfa or Kumfa in America, and Kumfa became Gufa, and the Gufa doctor, the whites and offspring will mispronounce it and write it Goofer or Gopher doctor, but it wasn't Gopher or Goofer. It was Gufa, coming from Gumfa or Kumfa, and that was a mispronunciation. Kumfa came from Kumfo, or priestess who becomes mounted. The Kumfo dust is the powder that the priest or priestess places on their body when they become possessed. It also deals with that white powder, that chirel. It also deals with the red powder, also the gold dust and so forth. These different aspects of Akan culture as Akomfo priests and priestesses become possessed. We talked about Jo, the Akan origin of the show or the shout, the ring shout in Hoodoo, the dancing in a counterclockwise circle, engaging that Jo, that shouting or missing, but also shouting for invocation of the Abosom and Insamam for the deities and ancestral spirits. We have the Adanko Ndu, the origin of the rabbit's foot talisman in the Hoodoo tradition. Once again, we go into detail about that in that broadcast, showing that rabbit's foot talisman coming from the hare foot talisman in the Akan tradition. The hare called Adanko, which is the male hare, Adanko was the female hare, is a healer and healeress in the Akan tradition. Literally called Hoodoo in the Akan tradition. In the stories in the Akan tradition, when one of the stories we talked about when the Okraa and the dog needed some medicine, all the other animals told him to go to Adanko, the hare, quote unquote rabbit, but Adanko the hare, because Adanko is the one who had the strong undu for medicine. He had the strong, or den undu, the strong hoodoo. So literally in the Akan tradition, the hare, or the quote-unquote rabbit, is the one that has the strong hoodoo. The male and female hare in Akan come from the male and female hare deities in ancient Kamit, who are healer and healeresses as well, a healer and a healeress as well. We'll go into detail about that. So that rabbit's foot talisman, again, is an Akan developed. The term Kanche, we prove, is the origin of the term utilized and mispronounced conjure in English. When our people were saying we were engaged in Kanche, the whites and offspring heard us say Kanje, and they thought we were saying Conjure, but we were saying Kanje, because Kanche in Akan language means to utter incantations to bring down the spirit. That's the title of our practice. We talked about the term Hinti, where the term hate comes from, talking about these discarnate or spirits who are aroused. Sometimes they're used for wayward spirits, but sometimes it's just a term for spirits in general, powerful spirits in general. We talked about the Hoodoo Adinkra symbols, the origin of sigils, but also we utilize Adinkra symbols in North America. In the ironwork, gates and windows and balconies and so forth, wherever our Akan people were, you will see that Adinkra symbols woven into those ironworks, who is stamping our culture here for hundreds of years. So we have a number of different, we also did the recent broadcast, Akan man and Akan woman, Conjure man, Conjure woman, Akan men and Akan woman. We've been identifying ourselves as that for hundreds of years. The whites and their offspring began to try to denigrate that title, just like they denigrated the term hoodoo to try to make it mean something evil when it really means medicine. And talking about divine medicine, connecting with the deities, and try to make the term hoodoo equal evil, demonic, pseudo-devil worship, all this other nonsense. The hoodoo man or hoodoo woman was considered a quote-unquote charlatan or superstitious. This is all propaganda because they didn't want people embracing the culture. Just like the hoodoo man and hoodoo woman, or voodoo man and voodoo woman, or juju man and juju woman began to be equated with someone who's a charlatan or a liar. The same thing with the Akan man and Akan woman. That's another name for a conjure man, conjure woman, someone who's from the Akan ethnic group, practicing hoodoo, practicing conjure. An Akan man, Akan woman became denigrated into a Khan man or Khan woman, meaning a charlatan. But in reality, it didn't come from conning somebody or a confidence man, as they used to say in the 1800s. It came from us identifying ourselves as Akan men and Akan women. We never stopped identifying ourselves by our ethnic group here in North America. So all these various aspects of the tradition that people thought were different, disparate aspects. The Adinkra symbols, the term conjure and hate, the rabbit's foot, the ring shout, the goofa doctor and goofa dust, hoodoo man and hoodoo woman, the hoodoo doll baby, the mojo, the jack ball, all these different aspects of the tradition are all Akan terms with the exact same meanings and a cosmological foundation and underpinning that can be laid out. And we're the first, of course, to lay that out in detail. The same is true with this notion of the two-headed conjure doctrine and the second sight. So when we talk about specifically the two-headed conjure, in the Akan Adinkra symbols as well as the gold weights, the Abramu, there are gold weights the Akan use, they're brass, figurine, humans, some are animals, some are geometric figures, some are plant life and mineral life and so forth. They use the brass figurines as gold weights to weigh gold dust, but they are not just, blocks like rectangles of different sizes, but we fashion those brass figurines into different ritual forms, into different symbolic forms. And they tell stories about the culture, and they incorporate and encode all aspects of the culture. So we have sacred Adinkra symbols in the form of gold weight or Abramu. We have figures of men, women, animals, and so forth, proverbial wisdom attached to every one of these symbols. One of these symbols, and we're going to include this in our upcoming publication where we're talking about this section of the two-headed conjure. One of those symbols is the Nipa Pinta. What it is, from Nipa means a person, a human being, specifically Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnut people. Nipa. Kro means one. So Nipa Kro means one person. Pinta Eti means head. Nta means two, as in jewel. Like twins are called Ntafo, means a group of people who are twins. Ta means two or double. Pinta means two heads. So that symbol that you see, the Nipa Kro Pinta, is literally the body of a person with two heads growing out of the body. It's a two-headed person. This is in the Akan Abramu, the Akan gold weight. Why is it a body of a person who has two heads? Is it literally a person walking around with two heads? No. We're talking about a two-headed individual. It has two major connotations. On the mundane side, it's talking about regulating order in society. Proverbial wisdom, Efe associated with the ancestral wisdom teaching, is saying one head does not constitute a council. You don't go into a council with one head. You collaborate with other individuals within the society and you come up with a consensus. You need at least two heads to form a council. so you can deliberate and derive a consensus, so you can put forward a statute or a declaration so that people can make good decisions and regulate order in society. We don't have autocratic rulers. We have representative government. We're the first, of course, to have representative government. Our governmental structure is balanced, male and female, with a panel of male and female elders and eldresses, and those male and female spiritually cultivated elders and eldresses are represented head, female, and male head of ancestral clans. So the most moral and upright and intelligent members of the various ancestral clans, they become the heads of those clans, and the heads of those clans take up their place on the council that informs the king and the queen mother. So we have representative government. Everybody's represented in society. We've got to make decisions that's going to impact the entire society. You have a council of Nananom Mpanyimpo, headed up by the king and queen mother, Okini and Okima, regulated by the Nananom Mpanyimpo, the elders and eldresses who are spiritually cultivated. So they go into council and then render a decision that's going to affect the entire community, so that the entire community understands that they are represented in a balanced way. So one head does not constitute a council. So you have to have at least two heads to have a council, to have a deliberation, to have representation. That's on a mundane level. That's what the Nipa Crow, Pinta, one body or one person, two heads. Nipa Crow, one body, one person, Pinta, two heads on the one person. That's what it means on a mundane level. On a spiritual level, it's the same principle. You don't go into council with one head. You're not an autocratic ruler. You're making a decision about what is happening spiritually and what direction you need to go on. If you're sharing something with someone, you don't just tell them just how you feel about it. You consult with the Abosom, the forces of nature. You consult with the Nananom Nsamanso, the spiritually cultivated ancestors and ancestors. And through that consultation, through that counsel, there's a decision rendered to show what's happening with the person. If you're divining for someone or giving advice as an elder or elderess, you consult with the Abosom, you consult with the Nananom Nsamanso, because they reflect the laws of Nyame, the Great Mother and Great Father, the Supreme Being. And once you receive that information in counsel, then you render that information to the person that you're trying to assist. So one head does not go into a council. They don't come to you as an elder or elderess or a healer or healeress just to see how you feel about something. They want to know what's in harmony with order, what's in harmony with divine law, and what is out of harmony. So you consult with the council, the Abosom and Insamon for the deities, ancestral spirits, and then you bring back that information, render a rendered decision that's rooted in divine order. So even on the spiritual level, one head does not constitute a council. You have to have at least two heads. Yes, you have to function in the physical world, but you also must be able to function in the spirit realm, but you must be guided by the Abosom and Insamon. Specifically, you have a physical head, but then you also have a spiritual head, which is your crop, the deity, the divine consciousness, and so forth. So in the Akan tradition, when you see that Nipa Crow, Pinta, on the spiritual level, that's the two-headed Conjure doctrine. So once again, another aspect of Hoodoo tradition comes directly from the Akan tradition, and we have a symbolic representation of that in the two-headed individual. Once again, now when we go back even further, we said the Akan people come from ancient Khanat, a title of Nubia. Another title of Nubia is the Undu land, and the people are called the Undu people. And then when we move to West Afuraka, Afuraitkaitnut, and then into North America, we continue to call ourselves the Hoodoo people. Now, we showed the image and the promotional image for the broadcast of the Pera or the ancient the sovereign Amen, so-called misnomer King Tut. We showed him and we showed his headdress, his quote-unquote headdress, royal headdress, misnomer crown, but the headdress. And, of course, on the forehead, you see the two entities, You see the vulture of Nekabet. You see the serpent, the cobra of Wachet. These tutelary female divinities, divine protectresses of royal sovereigns, governing northern Kamit and southern Kamit, and so forth. These two divinities are protectors, they're healeresses, protectresses, they're healeresses, but they're also divine killers, divine executioners, and so forth. They deal with healing, they deal with protection, they deal with divine wisdom, they deal with that quote-unquote second sight. They're in the quote-unquote third eye region of the head of the person, physically and spiritually. That's where they're placed upon the forehead. The seat of the pineal gland and so forth, directly pointing towards these two figures. We deal with Wachet and Nekabet. These are two of the divinities governing the planets, Wachet and Nekabet, or Yah and Abba, so-called Uranus and Neptune. These are two of the divinities that govern Yalda or Yada or Abada, so-called Thursday. If people are born on that day, it's either called Yah or Abba in our Akan tradition. And we have detailed information about them on our Akan Bosom series. But this, once again, is the origin of that two individuals. We have an individual, a king or a queen mother, but when they put on that headdress, they have the two heads of the vulture and the serpent. Divine healeresses to take you into the spirit realm so you can see clearly, because they're operating in that third eye region, in that region where your second sight is. So the two-headed individual, the healer, the healeress, in ancient Khanat, you have the symbol of the two-headed individual in Akan, dealing with the same principle on a mundane level, communally, but also on a spiritual level. Then in our Akan tradition, from ancient Khanat, Nubia, to the Akan civilization, West Afuraka, Afuraitkaitnut, all the way to the Akan religion in North America, Hoodoo, we still have the two-headed doctor, or Conjure, which is different from the regular spiritualist. So, we have these different classes of priests and priesthood. Now, for example, they'll say, what's the difference between a two-headed doctor, root doctor, conjurer, as well as the regular conjurer, root doctor, and so forth? If you look at the different classes of healer and healeress in our Akan tradition and the Hoodoo tradition, you have, for example, the Odun Sinifo. Odun Sinifo are considered physicians. They do engage in conjure, but they deal with the spirits of plant life, of mineral life. They communicate with the spirits of plant life, communicate with the spirits of mineral life, extract the healing essences from plant life and mineral life at the proper times of day, night, month, year, cycle, and so forth. And then they can heal people. They're healeresses and healers. They're quote-unquote herbalists, physicians. If you look at a general definition for Odun Sinifo in the Akan language, they'll just say physicians or doctors. Undu is the medicine. Sin means trunk of a tree, stalk, plant life, and so forth. So the Odun Sinifo takes the stumps of trees, plants, roots, barks, and so forth, and they utilize that for Undu or medicine. They're literally medicine or Undu, root medicine people, root doctor, literally. They're considered physicians or doctors. They're root doctors. Then you have the Uduyefo. Yes means to act, to do, to make. Undu means the medicine, but it also means to become heavy with the spirit through conjure. So Uduyefo or Unduyefo means the medicine, root medicine, Undu, working or making or doing, yes, people. Uduyefo literally means the root worker. Yeah means is action, working, doing, acting. So Uduyefo means the root worker. Odun Sinifo literally means the root doctor. So we have root doctors in the Akan language. We have root workers in the Akan language. We also have Udumafo. Ma means to give. Udu means the medicine, but also to become heavy with the spirit. Udumafo, the Uduma people are that's another title of root workers and root doctors. It's a more title that combines the two. So when you say Hoodooman people, Hoodooomani singular, Hoodooomafo plural, Hoodooman people became the Hoodooman and Hoodoowoman in English. The root doctor is Odun Sinifo. The root worker is Hoodoo Yefo. So we have these different classes. When you deal with the Odun Sinifo, we talked about, of course, provoking the spirits of plant life, mineral life, and so forth, even animal life as well, extracting those healing essences, those things that are needed to bring balance to a specific physiological issue or spiritual issue, and so forth, and dealing with them. Then you have the conjurer, who are conjuring spirits of Hoodoo Yefo. When you deal with the two-headed doctor, that can be an Hoodoo Yefo. It can also be an Hoodooomafo. They have the capacity to work with plant life, mineral life, and extract healing essences from them. But they're also the kind that go directly to the Abosom and Nsamafo, sometimes becoming possessed by them, other times simply communicating directly with them, and they're allowed to see what's happening with the person. They're allowed to see how they got out of harmony with divine order. Very often they're clairvoyant, clairaudient, and so forth. They can see which Abosom, because the Abosom show up to them, and they can point out, this is the Abosom who governs this individual. This is the person who sent the spirit of this person to plague this individual. Here's the spirit that's plaguing this individual. They can see what they look like. They can see what track they're on if they're out of alignment with divine order and what they need to do to get back in harmony with divine order. What Abosom do they need to invoke to get back in harmony with divine order? How did they step out of harmony with divine order? What is coming up in their life? What's coming around the corner? What things are about to unfold? How do they avoid that? The two-headed doctor can see that in addition to dealing with the plant life and mineral life and so forth. Very often the two-headed doctor focuses specifically on invoking the deities, invoking the Nsamafo, and engaging in that quote-unquote second sight. Whereas you have the Odun Sinifo, they also invoke the spirit, the plant life, mineral life, and so forth. But they do so mainly for healing, for protection, for strengthening, and so forth. They're similar to someone going to a surgeon or internal doctor of internal medicine, whatever issue you have to heal it. But then also dealing with the spirit that governs it. So conjure is always involved. Even when you take medicine, conjure is always involved because you want to invoke your Okraa, the divinity that governs your head, see how you got out of alignment, even when you're about to take the medicine, even when you're about to take a healing food and so forth. You want to align yourself, make your body receptive to that healing essence you're about to take into your system. So conjure is always involved, even if it's a rudimentary healing process. Even if somebody was having cramps and they went to a healer and they said, this is what you need to use. You need to use some ginger. You need to boil this ginger and do this and do that. Even if it's something rudimentary, you still want to engage in kanche. You still want to invoke your Okraa, the divinity that governs your head. You still want to invoke whatever Abosom that governs you so you can align with it, so you can take in that medicine more efficient, even on just a basic level. So the Odun Sinifo is dealing with that, the root doctor and so forth. The two-headed doctor has the capacity to do the same thing the Odun Sinifo does, but in addition to that, invoking the Abosom and Nsamafo to see what's coming up in the future, what took place in the past, what other deities are around the person, what discarnate spirits are around the person, how they got off track and so forth. Divining, we give an example, our major form of divination is in Akamomai and Marukai Tiji Muti, Akamomation in North America is a major form of divination. We have different forms, but the major form is our Wabo Jira divination, Adebisa. Adebisa means divination. We're utilizing water, which are shells of the Aworaboa, which is the bivalve marine mollusk, seashells from that particular animal and so forth, casting those shells, those water, those shells into into water. When we cast the shells into the water, the Abosom show up. They show up so that we can see them. The Nsamafo show up so that we can see them. show what's taking place in people's lives specifically. So that's dealing with a different aspect of the healing of the individual. Now, they can be directed. They can also direct you towards specific medicinal remedies for certain things, whether it's through plant life or animal life and mineral life and so forth. That can be done as well. But when they're showing how you got off track with your divine function, quote-unquote, destiny, your Okra and Krabia, what shaping forces and what abosom are governing this issue, what Nsamanfo are governing this issue, how do you get off track with the Nsamanfo, the ancestors and ancestors of your direct blood circle? Did somebody send a discarnate spirit to mess with you? What does that spirit look like? What are they trying to do? These different things are coming from that two-headed conjure. That's the other side, as opposed to the quote-unquote one-headed conjurer, which is dealing with healing someone on a physical and a basic spiritual level. Those are the two differences within the practice. Akan tradition in North America. This is why we use that two-headed terminology. Going back to Akan tradition in West Afuraka, Afuraitkai, that Nipakro Pinta, the figure of the one body with the two heads, dealing with that communal healing. One head does not constitute a council, but then spiritually with regard to the Hoodoomanfo, as well as the Okomfo, Abosomfo, and so forth, the different classes of priests and priestesses who get mounted by the Abosom and the Nsamanfo, the deities and ancestral spirits. Then they go into the nature of what's taking place within a person's life. And sometimes that does include giving medicine to heal or making certain kinds of medicines, not just for physiological healing, but to repel this kind of spirit or negative energy and so forth. It leads to that as well, talismanic medicine as well. Now, what is even the origin of that capacity two-headed conjurer to engage in what they engage in, and how does that relate to Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people in America? We talk about Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people in America being in the extreme west of not only the continent, Afuraka, Afuraikai, we're in the extreme west across the water. Of course, we're in the extreme west of ancient Khanit and Kamit. We were forced into this region. So when we look at the story of Alsar, Alset, and Heru, and we go into detail about this in the Kukutuntun, the ancestral jurisdiction. Alsar, Alset is forced out of rulership. Set takes over for a period, engages in its tyrannical rule. Alsar is killed. Alsar, however, is eventually resurrected. He becomes ruler of the spirit realm. In ancient Kamit, the term for west is Aminti, the land of the west. That's also the land of the setting sun. That is also the land, the gateway to the ancestral realm. Therefore, Alsar is called Khaniti or Kanti Amintiu, the Kanti, or the first of the Amintiu, the Westerners. People who die become ancestors and ancestors. One of their designations is the Westerners, the ones who go to the land of the West, the land of the setting sun, the gateway to the ancestral realm. They're in the Amintiu, or in the Aminti, the land, the hidden land, and so forth. They're called Amintiu, but he is called Khaniti Amintiu, the first or foremost of the Westerners, the leader of the Westerners. He was killed, but then he's resurrected through purification. Because he was purified, then he was able to be resurrected, and he took his place at the head of the spirit realm according to the direction of Ra and Ra, the creator and creatress. He's the head of the spirit realm. Alsar on the male side, Alset on the female side. They're the sovereigns of the spirit realm. Awusi and Ajwa, they're called in Akan. Obatala and Ududua, they're called in the Yoruba tradition, the Orisha, arch divinities, and so forth, rulers of the spirit realm. They're called Agu, Isi, and Ide in the Igbo tradition and so forth, and Dangbe and Minona in Vodun, Alsar and Alset, sovereigns of the spirit realm. And then Heru, ruling in the quote-unquote physical realm, as the king in the physical world, Alsar in the spirit realm and so forth, and Alset. So he's the first of the Westerners, the first or foremost, the head of the Westerners, the one who made this transition, but then resurrected, became the first and foremost, purified, impregnable with regard to decay, mummified, purified, impervious to decay. He shows us through that example when we make our transition, when we purify ourselves, when we quote-unquote mummify ourselves, when we become crystallized into order, because those mummies become crystallized, their bodies become crystallized, and as a crystal now, they're a great magnet and a great shrine for the spirit of the person who used to inhabit that body. That body becomes crystallized. They become crystallized in that divine function. So when you mummify yourself, quote-unquote, become crystallized in order, impervious to disorder. Now he's showing you how to become an honored ancestor or honored ancestors upon transition into the spirit realm. So therefore, when you make your transition, your body is buried. Instead of you being a spirit wandering around, earthbound, and hanging around the house where you died or the place where you were killed or the senior's home or a hospital or something and harassing people for decades or centuries because you're a depressed spirit, a homeless spirit hanging around and nobody's paying attention to you. Instead of going through that, you can make a smooth transition, go to the community of the other spiritually cultivated ancestors and ancestors of your blood circle and live in the ancestral realm in peace and harmony as an ancestor or ancestress, also assisting your descendants who are still alive on earth, your children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, great-great-grandchildren, great-great-great, helping them to purify themselves and their culture and the family and the community so that generations later, after that kind of purification and a sustained, purified community, when it's time for you to reincarnate, you will reincarnate through your descendants into a purified community that you help purify through your advice to them as an ancestor or an ancestor. So I'll start going through that process and emerging as the Khanit and Kamit, the first or foremost of the Westerners, purified and a sovereign in the spirit realm. He shows us how to go through that process through transition of being honored ancestors and ancestors. But it has another connotation. We are in the extreme west of Afuraitkaitnut. Just like our star was forced into a coffin and sealed up in a coffin and thrown into the water by Set and his associates. But then once the coffin was dredged up upon the shore, it was opened up and he cut up Al-Sar's body and scattered it in different pieces and so forth. We were thrown in that coffin. We were thrown in the ships of enslavement. We were sealed up. We were thrown into the water. Went across the ocean and so forth. Once it landed on the other side, then the purported pseudo-followers of Set, because they're really not followers of Set, opened up the quote-unquote casket, the coffin, slave ship, the great black body up, the black body of the community up, and scattered it all over North America on different plantations and so forth. So we were scattered. What happened later is key. What happens after that process is key. When Al-Sar's body is scattered and so forth, Set goes around after she escapes from Set imprisonment. She goes into northern Kamit and hides out in the swamp. She eventually finds the body of Al-Sar and connects with his spirit, and his spirit unites with her spirit. She becomes pregnant with Heru, and Heru eventually is born. And Heru, of course, rises up and he fights against Set, wages war against Set. Eventually, Heru will defeat Set, and he will be ruler in the physical realm. But then the key is what happens with regard to the resurrection of Al-Sar. During the fight of Heru and Set, or the contendings of Heru and Set, which you find in the so-called Chester Beatty Papyrus and other papyri and pyramid texts and so forth, at one point, Set rips out the eye of Heru. But then Tahuti comes and restores Heru's eye, restores his vision, and puts the eye back together. So when you see the eye of Heru, and they actually utilize the eye of Heru as for fractions in the mathematical papyrus, fractional from 1/4, 1/8, 1/16, 1/32, 1/64, and so forth. They utilize the eye of Heru that was broken apart and put back together, torn apart and put back together, also associated with the moon, breaking down from full moon to 3/4 to half to 3/4 missing and crescent all the way to new moon, and then piece by piece being put back together. A full eye showing back up. So the right eye of Ra is the sun, the left eye of Ra is the moon. He gives those two eyes to Heru when Heru takes up rulership. And when Heru was fighting against Set, the left eye was ripped out, the quote-unquote moon eye was ripped out. But then Tahuti came to heal that eye, and it was restored. So Heru defeats Set. Eventually, Heru, Set, and Nebuchadnezzar, they get the body of Alsar, and they purify the body of Alsar, and then they resurrect Alsar. And in the Shabaka text, so-called Min-Nefer theology, so-called Menfi theology, Alsar is resurrected. He takes up position first in northern Kemet, and then he goes into the quote-unquote portals of the sky and so forth, becomes that divinity within the spirit realm and ruler, sovereign of the spirit realm, and takes up his place in the spirit realm. But he's resurrected by Heru, Set, and Nebuchadnezzar. The means by which he is resurrected is key. Because Heru, the son of Set, when she was hiding out in the swamps after she escaped Set's imprisonment, when some of our people were here, some of our people, of course, were scattered, some of our people escaped from the plantations and hide out in the swamps in North America and so forth, become marooned in the swamps, like in Dismal Swamp in Virginia and North Carolina and so forth, hide out in the swamps, give birth to children who are born in the free territories that we established and we protected, and those children will grow up to be the revolutionaries and so forth. And those revolutionaries will go back to the plantations to help free up those who are still on the plantations, those who are still enslaved on the plantation, still slaving away in the cotton fields, that great black population who were preserved in the cotton fields. That's the great black body of Alsar that's wrapped up in cotton bandages or mummified and laid out in the field. But then Heru, the revolutionary, is coming from the swamp with his mother Set and Aunt Nebuchadnezzar. They come to resurrect or free up those who were still on the plantation. The manner in which Heru does that is he takes the eye that was reconstituted by Tahuti, the divinity of divine wisdom. He takes that eye, the left eye of Ra, the moon that's in his head. He has the right eye, which is the sun. The left eye is the moon. He takes that reconstituted eye, and he gives the eye of Heru to Alsar, and that powerful spirit force within the eye resurrects Alsar. Alsar is given the eye of Heru, which is really originally the eye of Ra, and that resurrects Alsar. He becomes empowered. He gains insight. He's resurrected. He can see within the dark, just like at nighttime when it's pitch black, when you're out in rural areas where there aren't any, street lights and so forth, and the sun sets, it's pitch black, you can't see your hand in front of your face. Full moon is out. When the full moon is out, you can see within the dark. The full moon carries the light of the sun, the light of the Aten, the Oriya, the light of Ra and Ra'at and so forth, because they operate through the Aten, the sun, the Oriya. So when you have that full moon, you have the light that allows you to navigate your way through the dark. When you're given insight, you're able to, or the illumination of wisdom, you're able to navigate your way through the darkness so you don't get tripped up, so you don't harm yourself, hurt yourself, suffer. You can navigate your way through the things that normally you would not be able to see because you can see within the dark. When Heru gives Alsar the eye of Ra, or that left eye, his own left eye, the eye of Ra becomes the eye of Heru, which is given to Alsar. He's resurrected. Now he can see. He has the light within the dark. He's in the spirit realm, but he's the one who illuminates in the spirit realm. This is why Al-Sar can be called Al-Sar Yah, Al-Sar operating through the moon. Al-Sar Yah because Al-Sar, Jo in Coptic for the moon, and then in Akan, Jo means moon, and Joda is Monday, which is today. Al-Sar operating through the moon is called Adjo, and Al-Set operating through the moon is called Adjoa. And of course, we talk about that in our Okra book. So, he's given that eye, and he's resurrected. Now he can see through the darkness. He's the illuminated one, and he illuminates the path for everybody else who's in the dark. He becomes the first of the Westerners, the first in the spirit realm, the foremost of the Westerners, the foremost of those in the spirit realm, lighting the way, showing the way, so that they can navigate their way through the dark. When our people maintain ancestral culture, those who were the Maroons who escaped into the swamps and so forth, came back to liberate the rest of our people, give them that eye of Heru, to resurrect them, return them to their ancestral culture, reject Christianity, reject that nonsense, as well as free them from the plantations and so forth. They were able to see within the darkness. They're able to see that culture. They were able to regain that second sight. In the Hoodoo tradition, they will talk about when a baby is born with a caul, with that membrane from the amniotic sac and so forth still covering their face. They're born with a veil and so forth. Those are the babies who are born to be seers, to be clairvoyant. Very often they become those two-headed conjure doctors and so forth. They're born with that. As soon as they're born with the call, they know they're the ones who are to be seers. That's one indication. In other ways, when children are growing up and they manifest that capacity to see what's going to take place before it takes place, and they announce it and it takes place, and the adults begin to take notice of what's happening with this child. And they know that child was marked by the Nsamampo and the Abosom and Inyame to be a seer, to be a healer, and they are taken into apprenticeship into Hoodoo tradition from that time. And they're guided along as they grow up. That's because they have that eye of Heru, that eye of Ra, and so forth. They can see within the dark. They can see the Nsamampo, they can see the Abosom, and so forth. That is something that is inborn, that is inherent, that is intrinsic, that's born of our blood circles, transmitted intergenerationally, transcarnation. It has absolutely nothing to do with black people from here getting up and going, spending thousands of dollars to travel to the continent to go sit up under somebody and get a name and get quote-unquote initiated and then come back and bring a little shrine back. That has nothing to do with the reality of real Akan Ancestral Religion, Authentic Akan Ancestral Religion in North America, which is the Hoodoo tradition. If you're born with a call or you're born with capacity that function, the function as a Udumako or Udun Sinifo or Uduyefo and so forth, that's inborn. That's written into your craft before you even come into the world. You're born with specific abosom associated with you, connected to you. You're born with a specific ancestral blood circle. But we have that within our capacity. We are in the extreme west. We are those children of Al-Sar, Set and Heru and so forth, who died, became mummified, resurrected, given the eye of Heru, the eye of Ra, so we can see within the dark. This is why Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnut people in the Aminti, in the extreme west, who have reconnected with our ancestral culture and have been given the eye of Heru by our Unso, our ancestresses and ancestors. This is why we have insight into the culture, insight into ritual practice. At minimum, the exact same insight that anybody on the continent has with regard to ancestral culture and religion, because we're still possessed by the same deities, communicate and possessed by the same ancestresses and ancestors, and very often have more insight into the cosmology and culture than some of the individuals on the continent who were born and raised there, because they've allowed their eyes to close because they're practicing culture corrupted and polluted by the whites and their offspring's culture, perverse culture. So you have some of them who can't see because they've been polluted. So they're talking about Unyame in the Akan tradition is the monotheistic God. Or Yonkompon is the monotheistic God, and Nyame and Odumakuman, Trajan and Ponga, just titles of the monotheistic God. That's pure stupidity. Proven that Nyame and Nyamewa, the great father and great mother, Yonkompon is a different deity, Odumankuma is a different deity, Trajan and Ponga is a different deity, Obuade is a different deity, Tetekwa is a different deity, and we talked about their different functions, and we proved that they exist in ancient Kemet under the same name. But you have individuals, the vast majority of individuals, for example, in Ghana, who will tell you that these are just all names of the Supreme Being, and there's one monotheistic Supreme Being because they've been corrupted by the idiocy of monotheists. That's for people who were born and raised on the continent and never lived anywhere else. Many of them only speak their language, don't speak English. They were born and raised in their own culture. But the eye has been closed. So we have greater insight into the culture than they do because we're over here and we were in the extreme west. But our Nsamampo gave us the eye of Peru so that we would have that insight into the culture. Moreover, when we left the continent at the time that we left, the culture was still pristine, it was still pure. It had not yet been corrupted by Christianity and Islam and so forth, hundreds of years ago. That culture, as it was practiced hundreds of years ago, is the culture that we passed down intergenerationally over here. And we didn't get caught up in what they got caught up in. It was only later in the early 1900s that some of our people, late 1800s, early so-called 1900s, that some of our people began to fall into this Christianity nonsense, and some Islam and all the other nonsense. But many of our people never engaged in that at all. And now we're resurrecting and bringing back that pure culture. So we have that eye, we have that insight, and this is why we have greater insight into the cosmology of Akan Ancestral Religion for those who are Yoruba and Fawn and Ewe and so forth in their cultures than people, many on the continent right now. This is why we're not dependent, so-called priests and priestesses on the continent for our culture. We have that eye that has been restored literally. We're not dependent on people who go to the continent to learn and study and then come back. We're not dependent on people who go to the continent and repatriate there, learn and study and establish communities and come back and teach every now and then here. We're not dependent on people who were born and raised there and never left there. We're only dependent on our direct blood ancestresses and ancestors. Every one of us has ancestresses and ancestors who are Nananom Mpanyiko, spiritually cultivated elders and elderesses, Nananom Nsamampo, spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors. All of us have someone numerous people within our blood circle somewhere who are priests and priestesses, healers and healeresses, and who are morally grounded and have the insight of the culture. That's where our authority comes from, only from our direct blood circle. Nobody outside of our direct blood circle can initiate us into the Hoodoo tradition. Nobody from the continent can come over here and tell us how to practice Hoodoo. We can teach them how to practice Hoodoo, but they can't teach us how to practice Hoodoo. This is our tradition. It's related, of course, but it's our tradition, especially the manner in which we function according to this region of Ancestry and specific plant life, animal life, and mineral life in this region of the earth, and how we have interfaced with this region of Ancestry and bound ourselves to her in this region. Nobody can teach us that. We've mastered that. Our tradition is born of that. Our expression of Akan Ancestral Religion in the Western Hemisphere is born of that. But our capacity to have insight and properly reform and restore and purify the culture here as well as on the continent comes from the fact that we are children of our Star, Authentic Akan, and have that same function of having been forced into the West, quote-unquote, died and resurrected and given that eye. So if you read from the text of Kamit, you have a direct reference to that. You look at the Mer text, the so-called pyramid text of Teta. It reads, for example, Kel Alsar Teta Peru comes, he embraces you, he causes Tahuti to drive back for you the followers of Set. He brings them to you as prisoners. He has turned back the heart of Set. Behold, he is stronger than he. That means Heru is directing Tahuti, the spokesperson of Ron-Riot, to turn back the enemy, the followers of Set. He is stronger than the followers of Set. Come before him, your form is before him. Geb, the earth divinity, the father of Al-Sar, looks upon your form, he sets you on your throne. Geb brings your two sisters to your side, that is Offset and Nebuchadnezzar. Because the king has made his transition, Teta, the king, and he is like Al-Sar when he made his transition. He's identifying with Al-Sar when he made his transition. He's going to do the same thing that Al-Sar did when he made his transition. Offset and Nebuchadnezzar came to the assistance of Al-Sar. Offset and Nebuchadnezzar now come to the assistance of the king Teta, who's Al-Sar Teta, who made his transition. Heru, the son of Al-Sar, has caused you to be united to the deity. They treat you as a brother in your name of saint, and they do not turn you back to the name of Ater. Heru has caused the deities to avenge you, so they are protecting the person once he makes his transition. Now, Geb, the earth divinity, the father of Al-Sar, has set his sandal on the head of your enemy, saying, get back, telling the enemy to get back. Heru has smitten him or smited him, attacked him. He has delivered his eye from him. He has given it to you. You obtain a Ba, a divine living energy spirit through the eye that has been given to you. You gain the mastery through it at the head of the Aku, the head of the ancestral spirit. Heru causes you to seize your enemy through the eye of Heru, and by it has crushed the enemy. You are more majestic in your name of Pa, Chasert, and he has a number of different titles and so forth. You have consumed or taken in that eye of Heru. Your body is fortified through it. Your son Heru has seized it for you. You live by the eye of Heru. So what is taking place here is once the person is resurrected, he's resurrected because the eye that Set is taken from Heru, which was restored to Heru by Tahuti. He takes that eye, the left eye of Ra, the quote-unquote moon. He gives that eye to Al-Sar, who is in the darkness, buried in the darkness. He's revivified by the spiritual force that animates the moon and so forth. He's resurrected just like the moon rises up and shines the light and shows us the way in the dark. The Ba, the divine living energy, animating the light of the moon, is the divine living energy animating our physical body and our spirit body. So they say he develops or derives that Ba spirit from that eye that has been placed within him, that he has taken within him. And then he becomes the head of the Aku, the head of the spiritually cultivated spirit in the ancestral realm. In the same fashion, when we reconnect with our Nananom Unsumanfo, who maintain the culture here, and they give us that insight, they give us that eye of Heru, and then we're able to see in the darkness of the Western Hemisphere. We can see what the real cosmology is. We can see what our real culture is, and we begin to incorporate that. Then we begin to restore our lives. We begin to function in a harmonious way. We begin to purify ourselves. We cease self-destructive activity. We begin to bond together as family, men, women, children, and so forth. We begin to engage in economic development. We begin to establish and put forward and operate and put into operationalize the 7 principal values of nation building, establishing methods of food production and preservation, establishing methods of curing disease, establishing a military structure, establishing institutions, educational training, military, governmental, and so forth, establishing sound systems of governance and jurisprudence, acquiring homes and building homes on acquired land, and also manufacturing textiles and so forth. We're naturally inclined to these various aspects of human activity, Afurakani, human activity, endeavor, because they're governed by the various forces in nature that govern the natural cycles of the world. Those 7 principal values, as we've taught about are connected to the abosom of the 7 days of the week that govern all natural cycles. So when we get in harmony with divine order because we're following the example of our Nsamafo, following our divine function, we are naturally inclined to function every day to support my ancestral nation-building restoration, to support Amanye nationism, which is the purification of nationalism, and we transform our lives. It's all rooted in that capacity to have insight, even before we begin to speak. When you talk about the opening of the mouth and the eyes ceremony in ancient Kemet, the person who's deceased, and Heru comes, and the priestess comes to open the mouth and eyes to help to resurrect the individual spiritually and so forth. When you open your eyes and you can see, you can operate even before you begin to learn the language and speak our ancestral language. When you first have your eyes reopened and you can see the Nsamanfo, you can see the Abosom, you can see how they operate when they possess the person. Before you can learn to speak the language, there's nothing magical about if you know the language, then you know the culture. If that was true, then every person on the continent, none of them would be Christians, Muslims, or anything else, or have English names and straightening out their hair and bleaching their skin simply because they know their ancestral language, it will be magical enough to make them know everything about the culture. Of course, that's not true. That's not enough. That's a piece. The language is an expression of the culture, but the culture comes from your interfacing with the divinities through spirit possession and spirit communication. So you can see them, so you can be possessed by them, feel them, hear them, and so forth, are guided by them. Speaking the language is simply a reflection or a conveying of the information that they share with you. And then you communicate back to them. That's one means of communication. But even if someone was deaf, born deaf, they can still see the Abosom. They can see spirit possession. They can become possessed, and so forth. And, of course, they have a higher level of protection because of that, being born deaf and so forth. They're protected on a higher level by their Nsamah. And we've talked about how we are operating in that capacity. We're born deaf, so to speak, with regard to speaking the language. But then our senses, our other senses become heightened. The capacity to see and feel and taste and so forth, spiritually on a spiritual level, become heightened, just like when someone loses their sight, other senses become more pronounced. Someone loses their hearing, the other, capacity to tune into different things becomes more pronounced. The same thing happens with us. Once you receive that eye of Heru, you gain that insight. You can see, you can tune in and see what's correct, what's out of harmony with order. Then you can restore order. You can purify the culture. And, of course, that's what we're doing. It's the fact that we have these publications on Hoodoo proving that the Akan tradition is a Hoodoo tradition. This is coming from insight from the Nsamafo, and, of course, it can be proven textually. It can be proven tangibly. It comes from the Nsamafo and Abosom, but, of course, it can be proven so that everybody else can see that it's accurate. But initially, it comes from that direction, that insight. And then we can show from the Hoodoo tradition the purification of the culture here, and it also allows us to purify and demonstrate that purification of the culture on the continent. So people on the continent are beginning to learn from what we're publishing, putting forward. They're learning about who Tritriampong really is, who Nyokumpong really is, who Tetekwa Framwa really is, who Obuade really is, who Nyave and Nyamedwa really are, who the various Akradin Bosom really are. And then we can also purify the culture and expression of the culture of ancient Kemet and Kana, with all of these pseudo-Egyptologists and pseudo-chematologists who are actually promoting atheism and other idiotic notions, infusing pseudo-esotericism and all other kinds of nonsense into the expression of Kemetic culture and manufacturing of pseudo-Kemetic culture that never really existed, blending in masonry and all this other foolishness with our culture because they really don't know anything about the culture and they're just making things up along the way and creating little Kemetic temples that have no basis in reality. And you have real insight from direct experience with the Abosom and Nsamafo, then not only do we purify the Hoodoo tradition, purify the Akan tradition on the continent, but we also purify and show the proper contextualization of our ancestral culture and language and ritual practices from ancient Kamit. This is all born from the eye of the Ka and Kait, the eye of the soul, divine consciousness. So before we get to the question and answer aspect of the broadcast, for those who came in a little bit later, we have this Saturday, Meminida, December 17th, here in Washington, D.C. We're having our Kait, soul food, Ojira mind communal gathering. We're going to have raw and cooked vegan food vendors, as well as organic coffee, organic tea. It's a free event, open to Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnut people only. Doors open at 6:30 p.m. Libation for Shui starts at 7 p.m. sharp. And we will be doing a presentation on the Kameti Feku, properly contextualizing ancient Kemet in the context of ancestral religious practice. We will be giving away a free copy of our book, Khanit and Kamit, to everyone who attends. So it's a free event, and you also get a free book, and we do that at all of our events wherever we speak in the country. And, of course, you can purchase the vegan food from the vendors, as well as organic coffee, organic tea, and so forth. So that is, again, this is Saturday, December 17th, Washington, D.C. There's an event notification on Facebook, on our Facebook page, Authentic Akan, also on our Ojira Mind network, on the Spruce network, ojiramind.spruce.com. Because we're having that event coming up, and in the lead up to that event, and we're doing covering some of the costs for the event, for the free event, we return once again, because people have asked about this. Some people missed this back in the end of October, beginning of November. We had a sale on our books. We had the 23 book set, the entire 23 book set for $100. That includes shipping. It's actually $91 plus the $9 shipping, so $100 for 23 books. We have that sale up once again. We started that today. Because we're leading up to this event, we need to cover some costs for that. So when you look on the website, the Unhoma page on the website, you'll see that we have a special PayPal button that says special sale, 23 Unhoma book set, $100, $91 plus $9 shipping. You can order that. This is a special sale just for this period leading up to this event. So you can go to the website now and take advantage of that, and also let other people know as well. There were a few people who missed the last time we did that was over a month ago. Some people said they wanted to take advantage of that, but they missed it a number of weeks ago, so it's back. And this will assist us in covering the expenses for the venue as well as other expenses for this event. All of our events are free, open to Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnut people only. We also give away a free copy of one of our books at all of our events to everyone who attends. And as we said earlier, we have given away over 1,100 copies of our softcover books for free in different cities that we have presented in. So it does, in order to cover that kind of cost to give away the free books, we need to generate funds for that as well. So if you support the work that we are doing, you can take advantage of that sale. You can also take advantage of the regular book sale. They range between $8 and $11. You can purchase one or more books. We have the 5 books for $40. That particular discount is always permanent. You'll see that on the website as well. So if you have any questions in the chat room, you can go to the chat room. If you have any questions or comments on the phone line, hit the number 1 so that we can see that your hand is raised. And it looks like the chat room, I'm not sure if it looks like it's still up. We were having, for people who didn't know, we had an audio issue in the beginning of the first 10 minutes of the broadcast. People couldn't hear, and the chat room wasn't popping up. But we were able to rectify the audio. I'm not sure about the chat room. We try to reboot that and see if everything is good in there. So we're going to reboot that right now. And it's just taking a minute to come up. And while that's coming up, so again, what we were speaking from, when you look at the Hoodoo Mind, Hoodoo Nation Journal for 13,017, as well as 13,016, also the Etchi Sign Ancestral Religious Reversion book, that specific article on the origin of the terms Hoodoo, Juju, Vodun, Wanga, Rigri, all these different terms can be found in the language of ancient Kemet. Each one of those terms has the same meanings that they have in our traditional languages on the continent, but also here. So the Hoodoo tradition is the Akan tradition in North America. Juju is the Yoruba tradition. Wanga, Obambo tradition. The Grigri tradition, Bambara tradition, and so forth. Vodun. All these terms, we show them in the Medusa. We show the hieroglyphs for them, the details, and the cosmological foundation for it. We're showing, just like we have done with the Akan tradition, that every tradition that we brought here in our blood circle, we maintain, and the manner in which we maintain that was through that insight that was given to us, just like Heru gave the eye of Ra to his father to resurrect him so that he can see within the darkness and become the first or foremost of the Westerners. Our ancestresses and ancestors who maintained the culture, they gave that eye or that insight to us to revivify us, and therefore we're able to see in the darkness and become the first or foremost of those in the West. Resurrected, purified, impervious to decay, purifying our tradition, and now we can operate based on that firm, purified, ancestral religious foundation in every endeavor. I'm not sure if the chat room is set, but we're just going to go ahead and end the broadcast here because we only have a few minutes left in the broadcast anyway before it cuts off. So if you have any questions or comments, you can send us an email, our phone line at ojirapo.com. You can connect with us on Facebook, Kwesi Akan on Facebook, Ojirapo Akan on Facebook, Ojirapo on Twitter, Ojirapo on Instagram, Ojirapo on YouTube, and you can also click the follow button here on the Ojirapo channel on Blog Talk Radio. And when you do that, anytime we send out the email talking about the next broadcast coming up or any event coming up, then you'll automatically be informed. Check out the notification, the event notification on Facebook as well as the Ojira Mind site. If you can make it to the event, we welcome you coming to the event. Please share that event notification with those who you are in connection with. Our people only, of course, those who are in the D.C., Maryland, Virginia area, even people outside of those areas, because some people have told us that they're going to be traveling from other states to come to the event. So please continue to share that information. And again, Yedase, we thank you for tuning into the broadcast, and Yebeshiabio, we will meet again. That's it.